Yeah, hi, welcome all. This is basically regarding the sociology topics. These sociology topics are away from the first part. That first part are like basically the sociological thinkers. This is the second part, which covers concepts basically like poverty, social stratification, social mobility, etc. So we will discuss all those concepts here. I'll keep on going with these concepts. Concept of poverty. Poverty is a low standard of living that lasts long enough to undermine the health, food, and basic necessities as well as moral and self-respect of individuals and group. So what is poverty? Poverty is a low standard of living that lasts long enough to undermine the health, food, and basic necessities as well as moral and self-respect of individuals and group. It is a state in which resources, material as well as non-material, are lacking. Individuals and groups fails to fully participate in different aspects of society because of lack of such resources. Even if resources are available, but if not sufficient for maintenance of self, development of identity, individual and group dignity, such condition is also referred as a state of poverty. There are two types of poverty: absolute poverty and relative poverty. Before going to the types of poverty, we'll just concept of poverty, we'll just repeat this one. It is a state in which resources, material as well as non-material things are lacking. Okay, like even the material as well as non-material. Material in such a way that their food, clothing, shelter, everything. They're not less. They are like deprived of that one. They don't even have the basic necessities of this. Then that state of thing is called as poverty. Okay, and due to this, the individuals and groups who don't have these items, the non-material things like education, respect, dignity, the self-respect, moral of in the society, these will also get loose because of their function, like survivalistic need. They'll start losing themselves because of materialistic needs. They start losing the non-materialistic also. That is an example for that. Next, and even if resources are available and if it's not sufficient for the maintenance of self, development of identity, individual and group dignity, then that will be termed as poverty. So poverty is being classified into two categories: absolute poverty as well as the relative poverty. First one is culture of poverty. We will discuss the culture of poverty with respect to the sociological thinker called Oscar Lewis. Oscar Lewis has defined what do you mean by poverty. So according to Oscar Lewis, culture of poverty exists in societies based on value, belief, normative systems, and such culture is transmitted from generation to generation. Example: culture, value, norms related to Indian caste system. Culture of poverty is basically, he says that Indian caste system is an example where people like that's in the culture of India itself. They will not completely go. It is not culture of poverty is basically saying that the caste system in India is existing not because of their economic status. Even if they got money, even if they got the economic thing, they the caste system in India cannot be able to change. That concept is going to be given by Oscar Lewis. That says that according to Oscar Lewis, culture of poverty exists in societies based on values. What are the values? Culture of poverty exists in society based on value, belief, and normative systems. That means some people in society believe that they're born poor because of their beliefs. Some of the beliefs, values, and normative systems, and such culture is transmitted from generation to generation. That culture, that part of that type of culture is transmitted from generation to generation. They were asked to follow that one. Like for example, the lower caste people. Example, the barber caste people or the lohar caste people who work with respect to the what is known as the iron thing, iron age, iron aspects. They will consider that their work is been like that is been defined for them. That is what been defined and it cannot be transmitted. That is been culture of poverty that exists in the Indian culture itself. Then, according to Oscar Lewis, culture of poverty exists in societies based on the value, belief, normative systems, and such culture is transmitted from generation to generation, and they have made to believe that they born in such class. Because of that, the poverty existing in society. According to them, poverty is it's in their culture. Poor sections. So here the explanation is going to be like this: poor sections or populations of Indian society have a relentlessly distinct culture with its own norms and beliefs, belief in transcendence, continuity, collective orientation, and hierarchy. Poor sections of population or poor sections or poor populations of Indian society. Example: those who we different states of India, like different states have implemented their own poverty line, the below poverty line, BPL concept. If there are some people whom we are considering as below poverty line, or those population is having some peculiar culture. What is that culture they are having? Their culture is different from that of a higher caste, or a caste which is more oriented towards the mono, like cosmopolitan approach is not there in terms of this population, that is the poor populations. What are the peculiar characteristics of the lower below poverty or the poverty population means, like they have a relatively distinct culture with its own norms and values, beliefs. They are having a belief in transcendence. Concept of transcendence is otherworldly. That means they believe that why they have been born in like poor in this age, or in this particular their birth is because their sin or the one that have been done in the previous life. Due to that, they have been born as a poor. That is concept is called as transcendence. They believe in transcendence. Why, if we do so good here, then we will get a good fortunes in the next world when they're born afterwards. That is transcendence. Then continuity, they believe in continuity. Poor sections of Indian society believe in continuity. Continuity means they try to oppose the change, whatever the change, they try to believe in continuity. If there is no particularly water supply, if there is no pure water supply, if there is no need like correct road in their particular location wherever they are having, then they think that it's okay, it's their fate, and they try to make that continue. They don't revolt, they won't ask for a change, they believe in continuity. Then collective orientation means they try to take an action in a collective manner, but that means that they won't individually take up the challenges. That is also a power, like culture of Indian poor sections. Then hierarchy is that one hierarchy. uh, High senior hierarchy is in such a way that he's a caste leader. Depending on his caste status, his ascribed status, he has been considered as the rage. That is called as the hierarchy. Then the culture of poverty is in general has the following characteristics. The characteristics on an individual level: individuals have strong feeling of marginality, inferiority, dependence, helplessness, resignation, and fatalism, that is belief in fate. These are the, see, just I'm just repeating this. Individuals have strong feeling of marginality, inferiority. Those people who are considered as poverty in India, the culture of Indian poverty people is this: they feel that they are been marginalized, they feel they are inferior. That inferiority complex cannot be taken out unless we do the modifications in society. Then dependence, yes, they are dependent, and they feel dependence even if there is no dependence. Then helplessness, they feel that there is nothing can be done from their end. Then resignation and fatalism. What do I mean by resignation? They try to that is exclusion. Socially they start excluding the fuller participation. Fatalism is nothing but they think that what all happening in the society is because of their fate, and they cannot able to change anything in the society. That is the belief in fate. Then at present time orientation, than delaying the gratification. This concept is, what do you mean by present time orientation than delaying the gratification? This is the culture of Indian poverty or poor people. That means if they are able to get 500 rupees for today, and if the requirement for today, normal minimum requirement for today, example, they are having, they may get, like they need to do have two meals, or a three or like for like sorry three meals, complete meals, along with some good food. And all those require, for example, consider if they 600 rupees, and they got 1000 rupee as a labor for their work today. Then their present time orientation will make sure they will spend remaining 400 rupee other than their normal value for the conspicuous consumption, not complete conspicuous, but just eating out or going out and trying to spend out the remaining 400 rupees out of that 1000 which they got. Similarly, when the next day, if they are not able to get the minimum value of 600 also, for example, the 200 if they got, or they don't got, and no, like they don't have a work at all, in that situation, since they have not saved anything for the from the previous day, they will be forced to take a debt from the loaners. then they will fall into the indebtedness. And then that is the culture of poverty. That means they don't delay the gratification. Delaying gratification is an example where if they got 6,000 rupee one day, spending 600 rupee and saving remaining 400 rupee for today, and then for tomorrow if they are able to get around zero also, they from 400 they can do, they can manage that. That process is not culturally, the poor people will not do that culturally. According to this is not according to me or according to any other bookish thing. This is according to the sociological thinker called Oscar Lewis. Then comes at the family level, what the poverty or below poverty or the poor populations of Indian families, those families think that the culture is characterized by relatively higher incidence of abandonment. Abandonment is nothing but leaving, just becoming like self. Abandonment is something leaving their children without having any primary education, leaving their parents after some time. You can see the urban poor populations who work under the metros and all those things, they are abandoned. That is called as abandonment. At the family level, there is no tie-ship. Basically, this is not a wholesale thing. Most probably these are the things according to Oscar Lewis. They abandon their children in most of the cases. Then the third level, at a community level, at a community, what is the poverty community? If a particular community is said to be a poorest community, that particular population, example Dharavi or anything, where at the cultural, at the poverty, at the community level is characterized by low community participation. First thing, entire community is not participating in main aspects of society. Second one, low integration of individuals in major institutions of society. Yes, this is important. There is a population, there is an integration, but they are not integrating into a major aspects of society. Example, there is no representation of those population in bureaucracy, parliamentarians, either the basic police system. When they fail to involve in major institutions of society, that culture of poverty, that is the characteristic of the power, like the below poverty or power poor peoples of India. Then comes situation constraint and alternative to culture of poverty. There is another concept called a situational constraint and alternative to culture of poverty. The culture of poverty is given by Oscar Lewis. To this culture of poverty, there is an alternative. Okay, that alternative is by situational constraint. Many researchers, sociologists, refuted the concept of culture of poverty and proposed that situational constraints causes poverty. Poor are constrained by the facts of their situation: low income, unemployment, low education, skill gap, other situations like sudden drought, flood, disaster. If these constraints are overcome, poverty can be abolished. Some sociologists, like functionalists, believe that poverty is functional in society and hence exists in society. Like Herbert G. Guns, according to him, poverty survives in part because it is useful for a number of groups in society. Poverty benefits the non-poor sections of society, rich and powerful. These groups vested interest in maintaining poverty. For example, providing cheap labor for industrialists, doing menial jobs for society, manual scavenging. This concept, see, just this is important concept here. Situational constraint is an example that is an opposition to culture of poverty. According to like Oscar Lewis, he says that it is a culture in Indian society. Basically, those people who are been poor, it's there in their blood itself, their culture itself. That's why they are not able to become rich. Okay, that is the concept of Oscar Lewis. What that is culture of poverty. But situational constraint is another group of sociological thinkers has given another concept called situational constraint, where they say that no, it's not due to their culture. It's not, no one is not, like wants to be a poor or poverty, to be in a poverty situation. According to situational constraint theory, it's due to the situation they may be become in a poverty. It's due to their situation. It's not the overall thing. For example, there is a drought, flood happened, even though their culture is not the one which has been characterized. That means the transcendence, whole orient, the holism, or the delay, they don't delay gratification. What are characteristics we have done, right? Like there is no social participation. These characteristics may not be there, but still they are poverty because of the situational constraint. And these constraints are being able to like we are able, if we are able to abolish this situational constraint, then we can able to bring the people back from their poverty level. That is the situational constraint. And one more thing related to this concept of poverty is, according to structural functionalist theory, there is a sociological thinker called Herbert G. Guns, G-A-N-S, Guns, Herbert G. Guns. According to Herbert G. Guns, poverty survives in a part. He says that poverty is surviving like in any society because it is having a functional need. According to functionalist, if any particular institution, particular social action is existing in society only because of its need, functional need. Now he says that poverty is a functional need. How? For which people? For the rich people, poverty is a functional right, right? According to Herbert Giggins, poverty survives in part because it is useful for number of groups in society. Poverty benefits the non-poor sections of society. Rich and powerful sections enjoy their richness only because they are able to relatively compare themselves with uh, the poverty or the poor people. That is what is the Herbert G. Guns concept of poverty. Okay. So just a minute, we'll just put my laptop in charge. Yes. So that is the concept of structural functionalist Herbert G. Guns concept. What Herbert G. Guns says that is the poverty in Indian society is beneficial for some parts, like for some people in other people who are not power rich. For example, the rich, the powerful people, they are able to get the industrialist, the capitalist gains very high amount of there is a profit for them with their poverty section, then they try to maintain that poverty in any society. This is according to Herbert Guns. Exams, I will just read out that one. Some sociologists like functionalists believe that poverty is functional in society and hence exists in society. According to him, poverty survives in part because of it useful for number of groups in society. Poverty benefits the non-poor sections of society, like rich and powerful get like rich and powerful basically they get more advantages with the poverty section if existence of poverty, then they try to maintain that those people. For example, these groups wish the interest in maintaining poverty, example providing cheap labor for industrialists. As I told, this is the capitalist mode thing. Doing menial jobs for society, manual scavenging, these all going to be done by using the poor and powerized section. So functionalist perspective says that poverty is functional to society, hence poverty exists in society. Why any function? According to functionalists, anything in the society if there is any functional need. So poverty exists in society because it is having a functional need. That completes the concept of poverty according to structural functionalists. Then comes into Weberian conceptualization of poverty. What Max Weber has given the concept of poverty. So according to Max Weber, the class position of the individual is his market position. The class position of the individual is his market position. According to Weber, what is the class position? Which class he belongs to, whether the poor, rich, or the highly rich, capitalist, elite. These are the different market class. His class, depending on that class, his market position is determined. Market position is nothing but uh, how you what is your position in basically the society, like can you able to negotiate for yourself, can you able to, for example, an engineer is having a high market position than an example of a diploma holder. Even though there is a skill difference, even though the diploma holder may have a more skill, but his negotiation power is less because of his market position is less. Similarly, uh, engineer is less compare in the market position. Engineer, one who is holding a B degree is less in a market position where someone who is having a PhD degree. okay, PhD degree, or if he is from an MS degree from foreign universities, then his market position is low. That is the Weberian concept. His class position, if an individual, is his market position. Okay, those people whose market position is determined by individual skills, expertise, etc. If market position is low, then they will be at poverty. So Weber says that if their market position is low, then they will be at poverty. Understood the concept of, like, just try to understand the concept of Weber here tries to say that if a particular person's market position is low, then they will be at a poverty. For example, a diploma holder is low market position compared to engineer, so he will be considered as poverty according to Weber. Their bargaining capacity is determined by their market position. What is meant by bargaining capacity means, for example, engineer can able to expect more salary. He will put forward his papers otherwise. But that cannot happen for a one who is just an ITI holder, just a skill like a Skill India holder, Skill India scheme. If they're just having a skill thing, is not a formalized degree, then the bargaining capacity. Then Marxian perspective says here that individual's position in the mode of production determines the chances of poverty. Simple as that. Individual's position in mode of production. There are only two positions in a mode of production. There are only two positions. It is a owner or a worker. If you are an owner, your chances of becoming poverty is less. If you are a worker, your chances of becoming pauperization is high. Then comes the concept of deprivation. What do you mean by deprivation? Deprivation refers to a condition in which people lack what they need. They lack income, education, skill, shelter, security. Deprivation of these needs lead to poverty and exclusion from fuller participation in the society. The individuals and groups who are deprived, who suffers from social deprivation, are unequally treated in society. There are two types of deprivation: absolute deprivation and relative deprivation. Here you need to understand. Unequally treated in society, and there are two types of deprivation. There are absolute and relative deprivation. Absolute deprivation refers to lack of basic necessities like food, water, shelter, food, clothing, and the phase is the crisis of survival. Then relative deprivation refers to deprivation experienced by individuals or group in comparison to others in society. It is defined in subjective terms. So there is a concept here. According to Max Weber, it's not a definitional concept of poverty. Poverty is, according to Max Weber, is not a definitional concept, because according to Max Weber, condition where people lack what they need. So this is basic definition. People, it is deprivation refers to a condition in which people lack what they need. They lack what they need. Just understand this. They lack income, education, skill, shelter. Some people may lack some other things. Since then, they feel they have been deprived. That is called as relative deprivation. Okay, like I will tell you, for example, you are an engineer, you have got a job, but you still think you are relatively deprived when you see an IAS officer, because you think that you have a lack of that power. Then that lack of power make you to think you are deprived. That concept of deprivation is called relative deprivation. Absolute deprivation, what do you mean by the absolute deprivation? Absolute deprivation is, yes, really they have been deprived. Even the basic necessities like food, shelter, job, that is employment, sorry, for job, food, water, shelter, fuel, employment, clothing, basic, like these basic needs have been deprived. Then it is absolutely power, they've been like deprived. Relative deprivation is, you cannot say. For example, you may hold a Fortuner car and still you think you have been relatively deprived when you see a one who is having a Ferrari. Okay, so then you are relatively deprived. You are also relatively deprived. Then Weber gives another explanation that relative deprivation increases the social change and mobility. Absolute deprivation decreases the no mobility. Indian society is low mobilized since most of the population is absolutely deprived. First, they think of fulfilling the basic needs rather than thinking of social change. Understood? So there are two deprivations as per the Weber's concept. There are two deprivations: absolute deprivation and relative deprivation. Weber further explains that relative deprivation is the cause for social change and mobility. What that mean? You think that you are having a basic model car, and the one who is you relatively deprived. For example, consider this example itself. This is a classical for the UPSC aspirants. Basically, they are engineer, they got a job, but still when they see the IAS officer, they feel they have been deprived because they lack power in hands. So what will happen? Social change is mobility is catalyzed by relative deprivation, not absolute deprivation. Social change in mobility is catalyzed by the relative deprivation. This is according to Max Weber. So how? Engineer tries to read about the concepts syllabus of civil services. He tries to leave his own job even if it's good paying and try to prepare for the civil services, and eventually he clears the its exam, and he also goes to that powerful position. So what happened? There is a change. The mobility happened from him from the engineer level to civil services level because he felt the relative deprivation. So here the relative deprivation is the reason for social change. What is the reason for social change? His mobility from the engineering level to IAS level. Social change has been catalyzed by what is known as the relative deprivation feeling. That relative deprivation feeling felt him to take up the job that is powerful. That is why the social change is catalyzed by relative deprivation. And he also shows that absolute deprivation is not catalyzes. How? Relative deprivation catalyzes the thing, but absolute power, the deprivation will not catalyze, because there's a person who is already like more than like he's born in a, due to unfortunate situations in a very poor tribal or in a very poor place where there is no facilities itself, where very much constraints. There are exceptional cases where the people or the individuals from that type of background also will be able to clear the exams, but I'm not saying with respect to the example classically, like in a wholer sense, if they are born in that type of situation where there is a survivalistic need, survivalistic existence itself is difficult, like you feel like your food, basic shelter, clothing, that itself is the, that it will be considered as absolutely deprived of basic needs like food, water, shelter, clothing, etc. Then we will be considered as absolutely deprived. In that condition, there is a chances of mobility is very less. You don't think to become a IAS officer at that time because you are not relatively deprived, you are absolutely deprived, and you don't have that feeling of deprived itself. You think, according to Oscar Lewis, the culture of poverty, you think it's the fate, that is the fate of the people. So that is the relative concept. The Weber has given that relative deprivation is the like catalyzes the process of social change and mobility. So this consolidates the concepts of poverty. So we have completed. So I just give a brief thing what all we have studied in concept of poverty. In the concept of poverty, we have studied first about what is meant by poverty. What is meant by poverty? The low standard of living lasts long enough to undermine the health, food, and basic necessities. Then we have given a brief introduction of Oscar Level's culture of poverty concept, and then we explained about what is meant by culture of poverty, why it is peculiar to Indian system, then what are the characteristics of a the culture of poverty, what it means, then on individual level, on community level, on a group level, family level, how that culture of poverty means, how that it looks like. Then after culture of poverty, we were able to go for the concept of uh, situational constraint. What do you mean by situational constraint and how situational constraint work? Then we have explained Weberian concept of poverty. What Weberian concept of poverty basically says: concept of deprivation, market position, absolute deprivation, relative deprivation, and how relative deprivation is the reason for what is known as the social mobility. So this concept is this like session completes the concept of poverty. Then next session we are going to study theories of social stratification. In that first one we study what do you mean by social stratification and different theories of social stratification. So that completes the, that will be the second topic. So we will start that like in the next video we will we can start with theories of social stratification. Thank you.